Welcome to the April 28th meeting of the Community Oversight Advisory Board. We're happy to have you here. Thank you for coming. I'm going to give you some information on tonight's meeting. Mandy's going to give you information on housekeeping.
I'm going to borrow Tom's mic, or your mic. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here for the Cocoa Town Hall and the COAB meeting. Just a few small things, but important things. Our closest emergency exits are right out here to our right. There are two of them, one immediately to our right, and the doors that are farther down the hall will be wheelchair accessible and won't have stairs. Bathrooms are right out the door to your left. We have childcare available on request that I wanted to make sure people were aware of, and people who are watching at home. We need a little bit advance notice, 10 days ideally, so you can call me at 503-823-5149. Contact information is also on our website, and we'll also have it posted up here on the screen, so you can always have our contact information. And finally, I wanted to introduce Brad Taylor, who is our mental health specialist. He's right there in the back. And if you need any support this evening, please just go talk to Brad. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. This is the quarterly town hall. And this is the night when the public has an opportunity, and the COAB have an opportunity to comment on the COCO semi-annual compliance report, a copy of which I believe is outside on the table. We will also tonight vote on a recommendation regarding the 48-hour rule, and we will hear general public comment, not necessarily directed at the report. And then we'll take a break. After the break, Dr. Rosenbaum will give a presentation on community engagement and the President's Task Force on the 21st Century Policing report. One of the things that I have been asked is about extending the time for public testimony on the report, and I will let that depend upon how many people we have signed up. Okay, so if we have fewer people signed up, then people can have more time. It is Passover, and Congregation Beth Israel has asked that we not bring in any food products that are restricted during Passover. The food tonight is from Chris Salads and fits within Passover guidelines, so please be aware. On April 20th, Siadam Edmo resigned her position on the Human Rights Commission, and in doing so, resigned from the COAB. We are talking with the Human Rights Commission about a replacement, but Siadam will be sorely missed. She was a great contributor to this effort. COAB members Bud Fulis, Laquita Lanford, and Ime Curley are participating via live streaming tonight, and they'll send their comments to Amy. Votes will also come to Amy. Senator Gordley was originally excused, but she just called a few minutes ago and said she'd be here. And Tasha Hager said she was not going to be with us tonight, but she changed her mind, so we're glad to see her too. The COAB is working with the Portland Police Bureau on a community engagement and outreach plan. And we want to get as many participants, as many responses as we can from the broad communities. And we've developed 3 questions about their vision for the police-community relationship. We're leaving those questions out in the community until the end of June. And responses can be submitted, if you can see this up here, via online survey at cococoab.org. Email to COAB Support Specialist Mandy Hood, or mailed. Okay? This is what this form looks like. It has 3 questions. What do you want the relationship between the police and the community to look like? What is the Police Bureau's responsibility to achieve that vision? What is the community's responsibility to achieve that vision? And we've also asked a fourth question in our workshop. What is it that you commit to do to help that vision materialize, actualize? So again, by June 30th, if we haven't heard from you already, we'd appreciate hearing from you. I want to make people aware that the Community Engagement Committee, Subcommittee, has been working on a Speakers Bureau, and we have we're ready for training. And I'd like to know which of the COAB members are interested, I didn't say committed, interested in that training. I don't need to know right this minute. I can know later. You can let Mandy know. And the training will occur at the, which date is it, Amy? May 12th meeting. We'll use the last part of that meeting to do the training, okay? This is an optional responsibility, but it is an important part of engaging the community, is to go out and talk directly with the community where people are. That would mean like neighborhood associations, clubs, other kinds of organizations. We will contact them, see if they're interested, or they may hopefully begin to contact us and say they're interested, and then be looking for people to go and talk with those groups, give them some idea what COAB is about, and then ask the three questions if we can arrange that, okay? So the compliance report is out now. It was posted. And later on, Dr. Rosenbaum will talk to us about the community engagement part. But I want to start off with the public's comments on the report. And again, I'm going to start you off with 3 minutes, and if we have time, we can recircle. Do I have a sign-up sheet?
Yes, you do. I just slipped it.
Oh, okay. Oh, guess who's on here? Mr. Handelman. What? What's the matter? Yes, hold on, just 1 second.
I'd like to just make a quick announcement before we get started. I'm sorry, Dan. I just want to make an announcement that one of our members, Merla V. Riviere, received a certificate of recognition from Portland State University in recognition of excellence in academic achievement and leadership, and I thought you all should know that.
Thank you, Rochelle. Thank you. Mr. Handelman, you're on.
So, Ms. Chair, I do have prepared comments that are going to last about 8 minutes, and I know you want to do 3 minutes. I'm wondering if I could go a little long since there isn't a long list on the sign-up sheet.
What I'd like to do is go through the 3 minutes and come back. That's what I'd like to do, make sure that people get their time.
I'll do what I can. All right, so good evening. I'm Dan Handelman with Portland Cop Watch. This is the short version of the Cop Watch analysis of the assessment report. I handed, I think, most of you both the short one and the long one. Some of you have come in since I did that. Our comments are such. The report confirms our concern that the Bureau is, to some extent, complying with the letter of agreement, but not its spirit. It also shows conflicting ways community input is being heard and incorporated. It's discouraging that the police continue to assert misinterpretations of the agreement, such as creating a checklist for deadly force investigations but not using it, not using the employee information system to look for trends, and not requiring concurrent internal affairs and criminal investigations of deadly force. The agreement requires an annual report from the Bureau. There was no 2014 report, but the COCL lets them off the hook with a not yet assessed rating. There appears to be no accountability mechanism if officers don't review new policies within 30 days as required by the agreement. What's that? Speak up a little bit. Speak up a little bit? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I was saying there appears to be no accountability mechanism if the officers don't review the new policies within 30 days as required by the agreement, and no way to test their understanding of the policies. I talked a little about this last time. I'll summarize it for now. The settlement agreement is important because it involves the public. And COAB has made over 36 policy recommendations, and even though the COCL said they've been passing on your recommendations routinely, they didn't send recommendations that you made in December to the Bureau until April 11th of this year. So I'll get more into that if I get more time. Because the agreement doesn't require the COCL to ask for input on the outcomes assessment report, which just came out on Tuesday, they didn't ask you for any input. I think they should. We think they should. There are at least 4 references in this report we're talking about tonight to the outcomes report, but that didn't exist at the time I was reading it, so it's kind of confusing. And I'll get back to that if there's more time. The spirit of the agreement is being violated by the focus group meetings that are happening out of the public eye to contemplate overhauling the oversight system, and the COCL defers comments on this existing system because they're not formally part of that focus group. With regard to the Bureau's use of force data, both the Bureau and the COCL have ignored our comment that the revised format approved by the COCL cuts out previously published data on the percentage of people subjected to force broken down by race. We can only estimate that African Americans, who make up 6% of our population in Portland, are subject of 27% of the force used by police. The COAB is supposed to have input into the collection of STOPS data along with the Community Police Relations Committee, but the Bureau released an enhancement report in early 2015 with no input from either your group or their group. The COCL previously asked for the COAB to also have input in the Bureau's training plan, but the DOJ warned of mission creep, and the COCL's WISE recommendation is now gone. Even though the Behavioral Health Unit Advisory Council meetings are closed to the public, the COCL seems satisfied their input in BHU policies is sufficient, which is, I think, not in the spirit of the agreement. How much more time?
Yeah. No. Come back. We'll get you back, Dan.
Well, hopefully we'll have more time to finish these up.
Okay. I'd like to make sure everybody gets a chance.
I was going to
You're
speak.
not on, you're not
I
on
was
the
going to
list. You're
speak.
not on the list. You're not next. Mr. Davis, please.
So,
Nancy Newell is next on the list. Please let Nancy
so do
speak.
I get to speak too?
If you want to sign up, I'll put you right here.
Cool.
Okay. I have Nancy Newell. This is the town hall. This is on the report.
The situation, as illustrated by Dan, is a huge concern to the community, and the report is not reflecting, I don't think, enough progress that we should be at this stage, and we're still fighting uphill to get anything done. And I think we really have to carefully look at better results, and the fact that it's unclear when public comment is the way it was listed in the agenda. There is no public comment after one of the reports at the end of the meeting, which doesn't, community engagement, which doesn't make sense to me, because,
There'll be time for Q&A.
okay, so sometimes it's confusing with the agenda, what will be time to talk about and what won't. But I think we can do a lot better job, and I'm delighted that the 48-hour rule is being considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. I have Pat Adams.
Thank you, Kathleen. Actually, Dan covered my 2 points, so I'll be happy to give my time to Dan.
I'm sure he'll accept it. Debbie Iona.
I'm Debbie Iona, representing the League of Women Voters of Portland. Just have some specific points to cover out of the report. So on paragraph 84, training, the roundtable discussions at the last COAB meeting highlighted the community's desire to work collaboratively with the police. The COCL's recommendation on improving training in order to diminish the us versus them attitude prevalent in many police departments, including Portland's, would contribute to building a collaborative relationship. Paragraph 87, Training Advisory Council. The League appreciates the COCL and DOJ's direction to the training division regarding meeting notices, agendas, and minutes. It certainly makes it easier for the public to know where and when meetings will be held and what will be discussed. We also agree with the COCL that meetings should not take place outside public view unless absolutely necessary. Those circumstances should be clearly defined. Paragraph 121, accountability, timeline for investigative process. As longtime observers of the Citizen Review Committee, the League has expressed its concern about the 21-day appeal process. It's not realistic and likely makes it more difficult to recruit CRC members because of the time-consuming nature of the process. The League is especially concerned about the focus group meeting out of the public eye to discuss modifications to our oversight system. Years of experience have taught us that the quality of community input is greatly enhanced by observing policy discussions as they occur. Reading a draft proposal at the end of the process is no substitute. We urge the city to open those meetings to public attendance. Paragraphs 138, 39, 40, accountability, complainant satisfaction. Up until 2010, IPR surveyed individuals who filed police misconduct complaints and published the results in IPR's annual reports. We encourage the COCL to work with IPR to reinstitute those contact surveys. Furthermore, the League recommends that the COCL review a sampling of annual reports. As the years have gone by, they have become less comprehensive. Last year's report would have made a good executive summary, but certainly was not up to the same standards as earlier reports. Paragraph 150, Police Bureau Annual Report. As with the IPR annual report, the League recommends taking a more comprehensive approach with the inclusion of data highlighting the topics listed in paragraph 150 of the settlement agreement. Paragraph 151, COAB, policy recommendations. The COAB has devoted considerable effort to drafting and approving policy recommendations. The city and DOJ should report back to the COAB and public on how those recommendations have or have not been incorporated into Bureau directives. Thank you, I'm done.
Time's up, Debbie. Thank you. Mr. Davis?
So my name is David Keefe Davis with Multnomah County Cop Watch, and
Mr. Davis, could you not use the camera right now? And that's the filming area over there. So I'm going to ask you to
no,
abide by
I'm
the
going
rules
to
that
use
we've
the
established.
camera because it's perfectly
Okay.
legitimate for me to record myself, and so yeah, request denied.
I'm not going to get into an argument.
So I wanted to say that there's this us versus them mentality that still is going on amongst the police department and the community. And I really don't think that they take a lot of these recommendations very seriously. They do try and play along like they take things seriously, but in reality, it seems like the police are this rogue force that have their own agenda, and it's very telling that, you know, we don't even have any of the upper rank police officers here, like Chief O'Day or the mayor or any of those guys. They just chose to stay home and opt out of the thing, just like the police are opting out of the CRC meetings until they're forced to.
Mr. Davis, you're off
do
topic.
that.
This is about the report. Could you please stick to the report? Thank you.
This is about the report.
This is about the,
This is about me and my interpretation of the report and how the
Mr.
police
Davis?
actually don't take this very
and
seriously.
let's stick to the report, please. Thank you.
Well, that's basically all that I wanted to say. Was they're basically this rogue occupational force that have a mind of their own, and they act like they're playing along with this whole process, but they really just have this separate agenda, and choose to do their own thing, and I see the exact same abuses going on that I've seen forever in this town. And I don't, just because some policy recommendations might have changed or some other things doesn't mean they even follow those policies, you know. They kind of have a mind of their own and do what they want, so.
Thank you. There's nobody else signed up at this point. I'm sure that there are probably other people here by now who would like to be on this list.
Thank you very much, Ms. Phillips.
Thank you, Charles.
Any other community members?
Okay, Mr. Johnson, you have 3 minutes, and then we'll go around again. It looks like there's enough time to go around a second time if we want.
Thank you, Chair Stott and COAB members. It's good for us to be here in Northwest. I haven't had a chance to thoroughly review the recently released report or the proposed draft that we're going through, but there's really just one number and 2 words that sum up the progress or lack thereof. Michael Johnson, 7 bullets. We're in Northwest, just a few blocks from Good Samaritan Hospital. And we know that no names come to mind for recent unarmed persons experiencing lethal force from the police. But we know that we still have a long way to go, no matter how much yellow, green, and red we have, because Michael Johnson is dead with 5 bullets hitting his body. Some people are also concerned that 2 bullets missed his body, but recently, as a matter of fact, last night, a scholar who's done, I can't remember now if this work at Yale or Princeton, came by and talked about the average, about 900 people in the United States killed by police. And in my connection with the COCL and the COAB, I've never really seen us assess our performance in a way of saying, how are we per capita in lethality? Obviously, our target, if we measured it that way, would be to be the lowest in people experiencing lethal force, or even non-lethal force from the police. We want them to experience minimal force. So I hope that as we work through these procedural recommendations towards that result, we remember that we are working for Kendra James. We are working for Jim Chassie. We are working for Aaron Campbell. It's disputable in the minds of different participants whether we're working against Frashauer or we're working against Kruger. But this isn't the court. We're not officially an adversarial proceeding. So we will work to honor those, such as Keaton Otis, who have experienced lethal force from the police, and try and bring our community to work with the police or pressure the police, whatever it takes, so that even when we have mentally troubled, armed people, we won't feel like we need to shoot 7 shots at them. We will take these veterans.
Time's up, Mr. Johnson.
And we will fire a single, now it's hard to shoot Mr. Johnson, the other Mr. Johnson who's deceased. He was seated in a position, I just walked by there yesterday, where only his torso was visible. So it was a challenging position for the police. I'm not using any particular language to indict them. I'm just saying, let's strive for a policy where we shoot once. And there's almost always adequate police force that if once is not enough, then...
Your time is up, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Thank you. I failed to do something at the beginning of this meeting, partially because it's a new piece of our meetings. What this piece is a statement of our purpose and the conditions that we are operating under as a public meeting. The purpose of Community Oversight Advisory Board meetings is the orderly consideration of the public's business as it relates to the settlement agreement between the City of Portland and the U.S. Department of Justice. Preservation of order and decorum is necessary for due consideration of matters before the COAB. The public is welcome to attend COAB meetings. During the COAB meeting, there will be time-limited opportunities for public comment. Public testimony on an agenda item should address the matter being considered. Other options for later testimony are emails and snail mail. When testifying, please state your name for our records. We do not need your address. Unless otherwise informed, each community member will have 2 to 3 minutes to speak to the COAB. At the end of that time, a signal will sound to signify the person speaking that she or he has reached the time limit and it is now time for the next person to speak. Please respect the time limit so there's time to hear from each person who is signed up to speak. Please testify only to the matter at hand. COAB rules of procedure seek to preserve the public order to ensure that the COAB's deliberations proceed efficiently and that those who want to contribute have the opportunity to be heard. Behavior that disrupts the meeting from its purpose by interrupting either testimony or deliberations is not allowed. You may show support or displeasure with your hands. Wave your hands, put your thumbs up, put them down. You're free to film COAB meetings. A section of the seating area has been set aside for those who want to film a COAB meeting, and we ask that you sit in that section while filming. This will minimize the distractions that are sometimes caused by those filming. This is a warning that anyone disrupting this proceeding may be escorted from the COAB meeting and excluded from the remainder of the meeting. And I apologize for not reading that in the beginning. Is there anyone else who would like to comment in the town hall section that has to do with the recently issued draft report from the COCO? Well, Mr. Handelman, looks like you got some more time.
All right, if it's okay, Ms. Chair, there's 4 members who walked in since the meeting started. Can I hand them my testimony?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Excuse me 1 minute, Dan.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Davis, would you please sit in the filming area?
I'm not finding Mr. Davis's filming distracting, and he's not moving.
I'm
about.
not getting the complaint from you, Dave.
But it's my part of the meeting where I'm speaking, and I'm not.
No, I'm getting a complaint, okay? And I'm asking Mr. Davis to sit in the area where that's designated as the filming area. Has nothing to do with you, Dan. Then I ask you not to film at this point. Mr. Davis, I'm asking you to put your camera away or move into the filming area.
No, I'm not gonna do that. That's ridiculous.
Okay.
It's a violation of my constitutional rights. Regardless of what the city attorneys tell you.
Mandy? Thanks.
I agree with you, Mr. Davis. I think you're within your rights.
Mr. Steenson, I just read the parameters for the operation of this meeting. Those parameters are approved by all of the necessary entities. I have had complaints, and I'm responding to those complaints. And I think that the people who are doing this business should be respected. This is a business meeting. Our intent was stated at the beginning. It is not a meeting to argue with the public.
Well, then stop arguing with the public. And let's proceed with the meeting. Because the city attorneys are wrong. It's my constitutional right, and, you know what?
It has been run by the city attorneys.
Yeah, well, did you run it by the federal judge yet? You didn't do that though, did you?
Mr. Davis, I am asking you, please. I'm asking you, please, to either put the camera down or move into the filming area.
It's unconstitutional. Come on.
It's not
Read the
unconstitutional.
Constitution. He's media. He has every right to film.
And he has every right to film, but he does not have every right to be where
What
he
do you
is.
say about that, Dennis Rosenbaum? Does he have a right to film?
Well,
He has a right to film. That's not the argument.
yeah, that's not the issue.
Am I being disruptive or is
Yes.
Kathleen Sadata over here being disruptive?
I have received a complaint about the filming, and I would like for you to, cooperate. Can you help us?
I am cooperating.
Madam Chair, I respectfully request that we have a discussion about this matter in the.
I'm gonna
public-
take
in
a
the
break
public
right
comment
now.
Session later, because I can't.
You're gonna take a break right now.
I can't comment
10-minute break.
You guys are seriously gonna call it?
Order and to impose any reasonable restrictions necessary for the efficient and orderly conduct of a meeting. If public participation is to be part of the meeting, the presiding officer may regulate the order and length of appearances and limit appearances to presentations of relevant points. Any person who fails to comply with reasonable rules of conduct or who causes a disturbance may be required to leave, and upon failure to do so becomes a trespasser. This authority extends to control over equipment such as cameras, tape recorders, and microphones, but only to the extent of reasonable regulation. We have concluded that members of the public cannot be prohibited from unobtrusively recording the proceedings of a public meeting. We believe the logic supporting the public's right to make an audio recording of a meeting also extends to video recording, subject to reasonable regulation to the extent necessary to prevent disruption of the meeting. And you are excluded from the meeting, Mr. Davis.
What, as of now?
As of now.
That's not appropriate. Those ground rules were not discussed by the COAB.
No, you're fine. You cut off the mic. The public is camera on.
This is her at her worst. She just loses it.
This is her only recourse to some kind of body.
What? I've been advised to not resume this meeting until Mr. Davis is out of the room.
You know, the mayor
Your hands are full, Mr. Davis, so you won't be able to be elected under
was found unconstitutional for this reason, and she's the city attorney. From the designated area only.
We're waiting for me to have a signal that I should start the meeting again.
Except not in.
It's just a bunch of nonsense being imposed by people that have no reason to impose anything. I mean, Keith may be obnoxious in terms of what he has to say. Well, but we didn't approve these rules. You know, these are rules coming. I can see Tom's trying to cause trouble over here.
Okay. I'm going to read the first paragraph of what I read again. The purpose of Community Oversight Advisory Board meetings is the orderly consideration of the public's business as it relates to the settlement agreement between the City of Portland and the U.S. Department of Justice. Preservation of order and decorum is necessary for due consideration of matters before the COAB. I think there are a lot of opinions in this room. I think I hold some information that you may not, and I would appreciate your respect for my integrity. This is not a situation I would have chosen under any circumstances. I appreciate your being willing to take a break and now to resume the work that is before us. Mr. Handelman.
Ms. Chair, I'm going to speak about what happened before in my public comment later, but I'm going to respect your rules and get back to the report. Before I spoke a little bit about the disappearance, as it were, for some time of the recommendations that you made as a body that didn't get transmitted to the police for 4 months. And the report says that the delay in the Bureau implementing the policy revisions is due to the COCL and the DOJ not getting their comments in, and that the COAB is actually ahead of schedule. But they also said that the COAB shouldn't be spending so much time looking at recommendations, instead that you should move on to, quote, other aspects of the agenda that have received less attention. I think that's inappropriate, since you are doing work as volunteers and you have gotten your work done in a timely manner, and the paid DOJ and the paid COCL have not done what they're supposed to be doing. So it's an inappropriate comment. Because the agreement doesn't require, I said before, input about the outcomes report, they didn't ask you for any input. That new report just came out on Tuesday. I tried to skim through it to find the parts that were referenced in the assessment report, but it's very confusing. What I did find out is that only 61 to 72% of enhanced crisis intervention team coded calls were attended to by ECIT officers. The COCL raised questions about 2 particular cases, including when Barry Joe Stull was arrested in city council chambers, and he said that did not demonstrate good de-escalation tactics. ECIT officers also only reported using their crisis intervention skills in 55% of the calls they were dispatched to. And we'll get more on the outcomes report. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to talk about it at this meeting. The report references an ECIT advisory council in 2 places, but there's no body like that contemplated by the agreement. The BHU advisory council is supposed to make recommendations around crisis intervention. I'm not sure where that came from. Regarding the police attending community-based mental health care meetings, we strongly recommend the city send civilian representatives or ask those bodies to include non-uniformed police as non-voting members. After observing the police advisors here, we think that would be the better way to handle it than ask them to go be voting members. The COCL reports that the PPB and the city relaxed their opinion on how much material is confidential and encourages them to define what public safety concerns would lead to the Training Advisory Council holding a closed meeting, which is a good thing. Cop Watch encourages the COCL to publish or cause to be published any documents clarifying that change in city policy, and whether it means TAC members in the future will have to sign confidentiality forms. We read that less than 12% of the officers identified by the Employee Information System received further review from supervisors. We would like to see the raw number on that, because the last time we got a report, DOJ said it was only 2 out of 127 officers that were reviewed, and having that raw number is helpful. We agree with the COCL when he repeats the DOJ's request that officers involved in deadly force incidents should fill out force reports before the ends of their shifts. And he said that delays in the investigations have serious implications for community trust, and that's an understatement, I would say. In the section about how trainers will be selected, the COCL asked the Bureau to explain why there might be exceptions to excluding officers from that assignment, but the agreement explicitly says the Bureau shall ensure that officers who do training have no history of excessive force and shall prohibit selection of officers who've been subject to disciplinary action for force or mistreating people with mental illness. So there should be no exceptions. The report says the PPB gathers data on police encounters, which is a term that's used in the agreement to describe the current data collection, even though the PPB only tracks traffic and pedestrian stops. The CPRC, Community Police Relations Committee, has been working on ideas to include mere conversations in those data. The Bureau was supposed to ask the COAB and the CPRC for input before the end of 2013, but hasn't done so. Of course, you didn't exist then. Where the agreement calls for misconduct investigation timelines to be shortened, the COCL, first of all, doesn't give a sense of how often the 180-day deadline is being met. The city was getting to that goal only 50% of the time in the past. And it doesn't even mention the Citizen Review Committee, which is subject to that paragraph, even though we in the community, the CRC, and even members of the City Council think they should not be. We don't believe any of the Chicago team have been to a full CRC appeal hearing. Determine how well the Independent Police Review Division has been communicating with complainants. We echo Ms. Iona's suggestion that the COCL should reinstitute the survey of complainants, which was dropped by IPR in 2010. The COCL did not examine the use of the Police Review Board's power to order more investigation in the last report. And they can, if they're in the middle of a review and they don't have the information they need, they can ask for more investigation. That happened in June of 2015, but that hasn't been indicated in any of the COCL's reports yet. The COCL has continued the practice of not naming names for fear that people may not be forthcoming with opinions, but we offer a compromise where maybe the COCL can put a list of people involved in the process in an appendix, say who's on the COCL team, the name of the chief, the compliance coordinator, a member of the BHU advisory council, and so on. And that way, you're not naming them in the report, but we know who the people are, so we have some idea what we're talking about. And plus, it'll be a historical record of who those people were at the time. The COAB has never met with the police chief or commissioner under the terms of the agreement, yet the COCL has assigned a partial compliance rating to the section requiring 2 such meetings every year. The COCL claims the use of force policy recommendations were delayed due to time constraints at COAB meetings, but if the COCL had focused the discussion on the substance rather than entertaining police pettifogging, and I use that term deliberately, the recommendations would likely have been voted on by the end of 2015. I only have 2 more points, Ms. Chair.
That's fine.
The report claims community attendance at meetings has increased. In our experience, COAB meetings were packed to standing room only capacity at the beginning with 40 or 50 people. At most, you have about 25 people at your meetings now. I don't think that it has increased. And where there's a reference to the parties, it should be clear that the city means the COCL means the city and the DOJ, as opposed to including the police association and the AMA coalition, because other people think that those are parties because they are parties to the lawsuit in a sense. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Handelman. Is there anyone else who would like to to give feedback on the report? Any comments from the COAB at this point? Dennis?
I just want to thank everyone for the comments, and especially having some of them in writing. We will take them very seriously, and some of them seem on target. Thank you.
Dennis, could you make a distinction or explain to people the difference between the semi-annual report and the second report
Outcome
that came
report,
out?
okay. So they're both semi-annual at this point. The one is the compliance report, which the one being commented on tonight, goes through the paragraphs in the settlement agreement one by one and assesses the extent to which there's been compliance at this point in time for this time period. In this case, it was July 1st through December 31st of 2015. The other report, the outcomes report, the settlement agreement also indicates that the city and PPB are required to develop systems that allow them to document the progress and document the outcomes of these reforms. So those systems, and many of them are measurement systems, new data being collected in records, new surveys being done at the training academy, whatever. Our job is to look at those systems to make sure they are being implemented and how well they're being implemented. And we're also consulting, giving the suggestions to the PPB and others about what we think they should look like if they seek our advice. And I do want to say that having those systems in place and collecting reliable data as the settlement agreement requires takes time. And it's going to be that in the end shapes a lot of the programming and a lot of the work that goes into meeting compliance on other things. So in some ways it's hard to evaluate the level of progress. And I know that was someone's frustration tonight too, like the appearance that there isn't any progress. There's quite a bit of progress in some areas, but it's hard to measure it in many others because the systems still aren't in place to document that. So, and we're putting some systems, the auditing of the force reports is something we spent a lot of time helping the police department, and the auditing team under Steve Jones and others did a great job of working with us back and forth to come up with a system of like 300 measurement points to basically help document, are the officers filling out these force reports properly? Are they, and especially the 940s, are the supervisors through the whole chain of command reviewing them and looking for completion and taking appropriate action if there are problems? So without that auditing system in place, which really didn't start until January 1st of this year, you don't really know how well they're doing that. New reports, new systems, and then an auditing system on top of it to make sure that they're doing it. So we're really pleased with some of those systems that are going, but again, too early to tell. So that other outcomes report is about what are the outcomes that are being measured to document that these reforms are occurring and that they're making a difference. It's one thing to say you implemented a new training program. It's another to say the officers actually learned something and applied it on the streets. And that's why we're encouraging some other measurement systems to be started that aren't even in place yet.
Thank you, Dennis. Questions? Tom?
I have 3 comments. One, I'd like to reiterate the recommendation that came out of the Data Systems Subcommittee that many of the findings, the ratings by the COCO, we thought were too generous. That you're once again giving the Bureau credit for work they have done that they haven't done, and that we urge you to be more insightful and more clear about what they've done and haven't done, and not give them credit for things that they have not accomplished. Secondly, I applaud the work that Dan Handelman and his cohorts with Portland Cop Watch did in looking at this report, clearly far more intensely than probably anyone in the COAB did. And without a formal recommendation, I would just urge you to look very closely at his comments, or the Cop Watch comments, and the various recommendations and insights that are provided, because I think, from what I know, by and large, I think that he's got it correct, and that there need to be some things addressed in that report that he suggests or recommends. Lastly, I can speak for the Data Systems Subcommittee, and there's a certain amount of frustration that I think we've been able to put forth, and it's not the only subcommittee, but at least from the Data Systems Subcommittee, 35 or 36 recommendations that have been approved by the COAB. And the lack of response or any action being taken on those by the DOJ or the COCO or the city or anyone else is very frustrating. It's frustrating to the community in that it looks as if there is no progress being made, that we're doing this work and it's not being listened to and it's not being addressed. And I don't know whether it's a matter of resources. Is this COCO lacking resources? Is the city lacking resources? Is the DOJ lacking resources? I'm not sure what's going on. But we've been working very, very hard, and with no feedback whatsoever. There hasn't been any feedback on the work that the COAB has done throughout the subcommittees. I mean, there must be 50 or 55 recommendations now, total. And over the course of 14 months. And you can talk about progress in terms of some things that you mentioned, and I'm not quarreling with that, but we wouldn't have passed these recommendations if we didn't think they were significant. And the lack of feedback is, it's frustrating me personally. I think it's frustrating to the COAB. It's certainly frustrating to the community. And I would hope that in the report or otherwise, you could address that more seriously, because I think it's a major problem.
Yes, Dennis?
Thank you, Tom. Just quickly, with regard to Dan's work, we have a lot of respect for Dan, and we've always listened to him, and some of his things we disagree with, but some of his ideas are good, and we will take that seriously. We don't have time to debate this now about whether the ratings are too generous. I disagree with that. I do think they've, I've talked to many of the folks in the police, they're angry at us for not giving them credit for the things they're doing. So I feel, if we're hated by everybody, we must be doing a good job. But I think that regarding your frustration with the work that your committee and others have done with all the recommendations on policy and use of force, first of all, we do value that greatly. Originally, we had this idea, we thought that we would be, because Kathleen, that we're chairing this effort and working with you, that we would somehow be involved in reviewing. And we decided early on, though, that we were not going to do that we were going to independently have the COAB submit its recommendations. We would forward them to DOJ. And we are working with DOJ. It partly is resources, I think, that people are so busy with so many things, but DOJ is basically in charge of the policy review process, and we work with them, and so I can't speak for them, but I think that there's just been a lot to do in Portland, and I don't think I don't know, is that Adrian? Did you want to say something? I'm happy to. Yeah, if you don't, might I just add to that?
Yeah. Good.
They certainly intend to, I know that.
It's good to see you back, Adrian. Isn't it great? How's it going? How's your sleep?
Non-existent. But I definitely hear Tom's concerns, and I know, and I've heard from others that this is a concern, and we do hope to address this more so at another meeting, and I've talked to Kathleen and the executive committee about that. But just to try to provide an answer right now, at least as a sort of a placeholder on this, is we addressed our policy review in a letter to the city on August 10th of 2015. And our policy review got started, it appeared to be started late because of the fact that we really didn't have the ability to start monitoring this agreement until July 30th, when we settled the issue with the Court of Appeals, and the district court finally had the authority to issue the order. So just keep that in mind, that we were starting off late in the game. PPB had a running start, and we're glad they did have a running start. When we issued the letter, there were, I believe, 47 policies that we said we thought were relevant to the settlement agreement. At this juncture, it's not that we haven't considered your recommendations because we're ignoring them. It's because we haven't been able to get to them yet. We have gotten through, I think, one policy completely, and that's the trunk mental health policy, or sort of the core mental health policy. We expect to have that resolved and finalized very soon. And it's really hard for us to do more than one policy. I mean, we have others in different zones right now that are being worked. For instance, you heard earlier, about the accountability policy, where it is in the city's court. We're waiting for them to come back with us on a proposal for that. We've got the use of force policy is in play. That's got some, it's in negotiation. And we also have a training policy that we're also looking at. So we have a lot of things that we are looking at, and and I apologize that our silence has made you feel like we're not considering your recommendations, but that is definitely not what's happening. If you go back and look at that August 10th letter, one of the reasons why we wrote that letter was because we wanted to acknowledge the time that the COAB needed to be able to provide recommendations in time for us to consider those recommendations. So this is a very complex, policy review is very complex, and it takes time. It's very labor intensive. And it's not just the lawyers looking at it for DOJ. We have 2 expert consultants that we run everything by, Dr. Munitz on the mental health side, and retired Chief Charlie Reynolds on the police practices side. And so just, long-winded answer, we are looking at everything you provide us. We just don't have anything finalized yet as to actual promulgated policy that we will approve. We're very close on the first one, on the mental health one, and we hope the others don't take quite as long. Hopefully they won't be as complicated as that one. So I hope that provides some information about where we're at, but we are not able to get into all the different recommendations and where we're considering them at this juncture. But we are looking at them, for sure.
Thank you, Adrian. I had 2 people's hands raised. If it's essential, let's take it. If not, I'd like to move this agenda. Okay, Ava?
Thank you. Mr. Handelman points out a concern that has been expressed by COAB members as well, and myself included, that the COAB has never met with the police chief or commissioner under the terms of the agreement. Yet the COCO has again assigned a partial compliance rating to the section requiring 2 such meetings every year. Now, I can recall that when we first started meeting in February of last year, the chief and mayor appeared together, I believe, with a kind of go forth and do good work bidding. But beyond that, we've not had a meeting of significance as a body. And so I'm wondering how the partial compliance rating can be assigned when we've not met.
We are, well, that's, but I'm going to just give you a piece of information. We are scheduled to have that meeting on the 26th of May. So, but the question remains.
Why a partial, please, yeah.
On that particular one, I'm not certain of that. I was less involved in that. I do know there was a disagreement about when the chief should come in until there was prior meetings. Amy, you may be able to remember that, but there was a sense that there needed to be some meetings to decide what the meeting with the chief was about, and that didn't happen. That was my sense, and meetings about meetings. But what else is new? And I think we had assigned that early on in the first report. Was that not the case? I can't remember. But I was not involved in that particular evaluation of that particular paragraph. Excuse me. So I hear what you're saying. My bigger point is that it's certainly not going to go beyond partial compliance until there's a lot more work being done, And if the issue, I don't know, the chief may want to speak for himself about his role in that, or someone representing the chief, but I'm not going to speak for them tonight because I don't have the information I need.
Okay.
But
So where did the partial compliance rating come from, and who assigned that rating? That's the question.
yeah, I'll have to check back with our team about what information was used. And I know we consulted with some folks here as well about that. So I'll have to get back to you about that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And, okay, I need to move the agenda so that we make sure that we get this recommendation considered tonight. So I had Philip, and then I want to stop Rochelle. Philip?
I'll be quick. So yeah, Kathleen, 2 things. For the accountability, I'm the chair for the accountability meeting, and the team feels that less transparency is, we've been working really hard on the recommendation for the DOJ, and we've heard nothing. And I understand that, we just heard that they're very busy, and I understand that. But it would be nice if we got some sort of notification about, yes, we are in fact looking at this right now, or just some sort of communication would be nice to know what's going on. So we can feel, like there's some sort of alliance with the community there, but there just doesn't seem to be, and that hasn't helped with transparency or trust, for that matter. And I do agree with Tom, secondly. I want to thank Dan for your opinion and your foresight. These comments are going to become a recommendation. And again, I commend you for the work that you've done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on. I'm sorry to cut this short, but our time got interrupted and we've been distracted. I'd like to come back to one important piece of the meeting tonight, which is the consideration of the recommendation that's been submitted. I will read it. The Community Oversight Advisory Board urgently advises Mayor Hales and Chief O'Day to immediately remove the 48-hour rule from PPB policies, procedures, and the Portland Police Association collective bargaining agreement. As a range of Portland social justice, religious, and non-affiliated community leaders and partners have shown, and the OIR group, herein OIR, and the Police Assessment Resource Center, organizations have reported the well-known 48-hour rule has repeatedly shown to be antithetical to good community policing. The impact of the 48-hour rule on Portland community has had a historical trajectory of confusion, mistrust, and skepticism about the Portland Police Bureau, herein PPB. And because the 48-hour rule is situated within the collective bargaining agreement, the Portland Police Association, herein PPA, itself. Since the role of the PPA is to act on behalf of the members of the Portland Police Bureau and not on behalf of the inhabitants of Portland, this places the members of the Portland Police Bureau in a most precarious position against the very community they are charged to keep and maintain safely. Continuing with this philosophy demonstrates an ethos which is diametrically opposed to the very community for which they have the responsibility for public safety. Further, since the City Council is a signatory on the PPA and likewise a representative body of Portland citizens, maintaining the 48-hour rule within the PPA collective bargaining agreement puts the City Council representatives in direct opposition to the very citizens who elected them to the council. To maintain the 48-hour rule or to require concessions on unrelated matters in return for abandoning such a rule speaks against the very missions of both the PPB and the PPA. Therefore, the Community Oversight Advisory Board, as per paragraph 141 of the settlement agreement, urgently advises Mayor Hales and Chief O'Day to take immediate steps to remove the 48-hour rule from PPB policies, procedures, and the Portland Police Association collective bargaining agreement in acknowledgement that the rule is contrary to good policing. Discussion. Philip.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment, if that's all right.
Yes. Go ahead and say what it is.
I want to make sure this is clear. Okay. Okay, the friendly amendment, as I would like it to read. In addition, COAB respectfully requests that the mayor and the chief provide COAB a high-level plan for achieving this objective, including a certain time when the city will report to COAB on its compliance to paragraphs 124 and 127 of the settlement agreement. Compelled statements and in-scene interviews, which are addressed as non-compliant and partially compliant in DOJ's last report, respectively.
Did somebody capture that, and can they read it back? Philip, can you read that again?
Sure. In addition, COAB respectfully requests that the mayor and chief provide COAB a high-level plan for achieving this objective, including a certain time when the city will report to COAB on its compliance to paragraphs 124 and 127 of the settlement agreement. Compelled statements and in-scene interviews, which were addressed as non-compliant and partially compliant in the DOJ's last report, respectively.
Okay. We're considering the amendment first, the friendly amendment. Since you are the chair of that committee, Philip, it seems like that's your recommendation from that committee.
Yeah.
All right. So, for the COAB members, do you have discussion on the amendment first?
We need a second?
Yeah.
Second.
Discussion on the amendment. The amendment simply adds to the original proposal the request for a response from the city and the chief that indicates there is a plan and suggests giving a timeline for the implementation of that plan. That's how I understand the amendment. Jim?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I want to comment on the amendment, and I really like the amendment personally, and I think it will help us build trust, the community and the PPB build trust with one another. This is a step toward building trust, and getting stuff out in a timely manner to the community and to anybody else who's involved is very important. And if we don't do that, it looks like we're not doing any work. Nobody's doing any work, and nobody's being satisfied, and the beat goes on. And we need to, not have that happen. So, yeah, I just think it's a good deal.
Any other comments on the amendment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you ready for the question? All in favor, we're voting on the amendment only right now. I will. Are you ready for the question? Okay. Please indicate yes, no, or abstain as I call your name. Rabbi Kahana,
Yes.
Bud Pulis, Catherine Gardner,
Yes.
Abel Gordley, Jimmy Johnson,
Yes.
Ime Curley, Laquita Lanford, Medina, Alicia Moreland Capua, I'm having a hard time seeing that.
Yes.
V. Revere, Rochelle Silver, Tom Steenson,
Yes.
Philip Wolf.
Yes.
The amendment passes. Now, we're moving back to so it's now part of the overall proposal. Any discussion on the proposal itself?
Can I bring it to a vote?
No, I just think we need a little bit of input from the community. I have 3 people signed up here.
Sure.
Dr. Haynes?
Madam Chair and the eminent members of the COAB and COCO, this amendment and proposal is something that I have been and the MA Coalition has been promoting for over 12 years now. And the context of it deals with the issue of integrity, the issues of trust, and the issues of accountability. The 48-hour rule creates a double standard and is seen as a double standard between the citizens of this great community and the Portland police officers. Best practices that we have studied and that the own city consultants have stated over and over again the last 8 years. The reports have continued to state that the 48-hour rule is a hindrance to the investigative process and to creating trust within the citizens of Portland. Best practices of major police departments across the nation have called for the elimination of the 48-hour rule. Furthermore, all cases, non-lethal or lethal cases, there's a basic administrative requirement of a report by officers on all incidents that take place. And so we feel that this is not a constitutional jeopardy when most major police departments across the country are doing it right now and have withstood legal standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Haynes. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As my name is Charles Johnson, for the record. As usual, there's really not too much to add, and certainly can't be added as eloquently as Dr. Haynes' statement, making the clear, rational, and moral case why the 48-hour rule must be abolished, and that your language is generally correct. I know you've just amended it, but I think it might be constructive if you specifically mention the date of expiration of the current collective bargaining agreement and ask that the United States Department of Justice express an opinion as to whether that particular rule undermines the best interest of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Brad Taylor will read a statement from Ann Brayfield. Excuse me.
I wanted to get the last part of what Charles said.
Charles?
You were saying that DOJ expresses an opinion. Can you repeat?
You know, as Dr. Haynes testified, almost all major metropolitan police departments don't find this to be in the greater interest of justice. And so I would think that if it's not already on paper somewhere from the United States Department of Justice, that somewhere in the Civil Rights Division or somewhere in the United States Department of Justice, they would have already gone on record affirming that 48-hour rules are bad. And really, I think that implies that the city has a moral obligation to resist the perpetuation of that rule up to the point of if the police should choose to strike on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
I think January 17th is...
That is the date. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Brad Taylor. I'm a mental health specialist with the city. It's so nice to see all of you. Appreciate you being here tonight. I'm going to read comments by Ann Brayfield, who's participating through the live stream. I am Ann Brayfield, concerned citizen. I urge a way to be found to eliminate the 48-hour rule as soon as possible. I believe that eliminating the 48-hour rule will go a very long way to reestablish community trust. In addition, the 48-hour rule is not a best practice of policing. In the New York Times article earlier this week, Portland was put forward as a model of policing for other cities in the country. I would suggest that being a policing model for the rest of the country would include Portland eliminating the 48-hour rule immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad, very much. Anybody who did not sign up who wants to comment on this? Okay. And in the future, I really would appreciate it if you sign up. It gives me a heads
What's
up
that?
on, okay? Go ahead.
I didn't hear what you said.
In the future, I would appreciate it if you sign up.
Oh, I didn't see a sign-up sheet for this.
Oh,
I
maybe
just
we-
saw the
maybe
general
we
sign-up
took
sheet.
it.
I signed up for the other two things.
Okay.
I got plenty of things to sign on the way in. Okay, so Dan Handelman again with Portland Cop Watch. Just the testimony I gave before about the semi-annual assessment report was the short version, and I handed most of you the long version. I emailed it out too. And we addressed issues related to the 48-hour rule in the longer version. And just for the record, I know you're all in favor of this already, but I just want to give supporting testimony that the COCL reviewed 4 out of the 6 shooting incidents last year, and the officers were asked to give voluntary walkthroughs on the scene, and all of them said, on the advice of my attorney, I decline. That is very troubling in terms of community trust. The other piece is that the COCL reported that of those 4 cases that they reviewed, I'm still not sure, I know one of the cases that wasn't studied, I'm not sure what happened to the 6th case. The officers were called in only once at the 48-hour mark, with 2 others came in at 3 days and 1 was called in at 4 days. So, even though it's a minimum 48 hours, some officers are being called in much even further down the line than that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Debbie Iona with League of Women Voters of Portland. So I just wanted to read a couple paragraphs. This is from the report that the OIR group did in January 2016 of closed cases of shootings and deaths in custody. The auditor arranges for these reviews to be done. So, and this is how they explain their recommendation to get rid of the 48-hour rule.
What page are you on?
Oh, I'm on page 116. Some police officer advocate groups have pointed to memory studies which suggest memory improves after an individual has had an opportunity to de-stress, sleep, and process the event before being called upon to provide a recollection as a reason to afford officers up to a 3-day period before being interviewed. Those advocates, however, undervalue the competing factors detailed above, including the potential for conscious or unconscious contamination during the wait period. Moreover, if police agencies were to accept this premise as paramount, they should likewise delay the preparation of written police reports and the collection of witness, victim, or suspect statements after any event. This clearly would not be consistent with accepted police investigative practices, which teach that subjects, victims, and witnesses should generally be interviewed as soon as they are identified. Some have questioned whether the real reason for a delay in interviewing officers is to afford the officers the opportunity to either consciously or subconsciously choreograph or tailor their responses with the help of external influences or exposure. In other words, to get their stories straight, in quotes. The fact that this belief persists among community members is damaging to the credibility of the police agency and its investigative and review processes, and should provide additional incentive for the city to eliminate the 48-hour rule. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. V?
I want to thank Deb for, you read practically everything I wanted to read too. I want to add, and it's in our packet, it's included, the Accountability Subcommittee included it with the recommendation. It's on the third page, second paragraph. In reality, the delay may not afford the officers any advantage whatsoever and may call into question the usefulness of their statements because the likelihood of memory contamination or memory loss. In talking with officers involved in critical incidents, many have expressed their desire to quickly provide their account of what occurred and have reported that any delay may be counterproductive to their interest in giving their report in a timely fashion and their ability to provide an accurate and useful account. In fact, as noted in the discussion of the shooting, okay, I'm not going to say that, but I just wanted to end what Deb said with that particular sentence. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments from the COAB board? Discussion? Tom?
Just one point. We all know that we previously approved a recommendation to get rid of the 48-hour rule. And I think part of what the Accountability Subcommittee is trying to do here that I serve on is sort of bypass what turns out to be an elongated, tedious process of sending a recommendation through the DOJ. This recommendation really says directly to the mayor and the chief, we want it done now. Mm-hmm. And we're not waiting for the DOJ to weigh in on the issue. And I don't mean disrespect to the public comment, but I think that's what the subcommittee is trying to do with this recommendation, is just get it done and get it done now. And they could amend the current CBA tomorrow if they had the wherewithal to sit down with the union and get it done. They don't have to wait until 2017 or whenever the next negotiated contract may be agreed upon.
Okay. More discussion? All right. Ready for the question? Philip?
Yes, I move to vote.
Okay. Second? Okay. Okay, I'm going to call the roll, and we're voting on the whole package now. Rabbi Kahana?
Yes.
Bud Pulis?
Yes.
Catherine Gardner?
Yes.
Abel Gordley?
Yes.
Jimmy Johnson?
Yes.
Ime Curley? Is that Laquita Langford? Maria Medina? Alicia Moreland Capua?
Yes.
V. Revere?
Yes, yeah.
Rochelle Silver? Yes. Tom Steenson?
Yes.
Philip Wolf?
Yes.
The recommendation passes.
Thank you for supporting my recommendation. I feel like this will be a great success, pushing them to make this happen. So thank you.
Thank you for your cooperation. We originally had a break schedule for this time. I think we are so behind that we probably need to just jump right into the presentation by Dr. Rosenbaum. You want 5 minutes? 5-minute break.
Just to get.
Oh, yeah, Mandy just reminded me that we are up for a general comment period that didn't get done. So we've got
Do that before the break?
about 6 minutes for that. So let's do that before the break. Let's do that before the break. Dan Handelman.
Hi, I'm Dan Handelman, in case you didn't know
No
yet.
kidding.
I'm with Portland Cop Watch. And I'm also with a group called Flying Focus Video Collective, but you never see me wearing that hat here because there's Portland Community Media is taping all your meetings. That was something that Justice DeMunis wanted to make sure got set up right at the beginning of this whole process, and I'm glad that I don't have to bring my camera down here to tape you guys. But that said, you know, I tape every meeting of the Citizen Review Committee. I have taped every meeting of the review board before they existed, which was called PIAC. And it's been 24 years I've been taping meetings of the Police Review Board. And the taping at those meetings became a controversy over the last few months. They started asking me to move my camera to different places. And ultimately, there was an incident I think you might have read about in the paper at the CRC meeting, and the police refused to come back to the next meeting, and the CRC set up a bunch of ground rules. And in their ground rules, and you know, this is partly why you have your public filming area now, they tried to get the entire audience to sit all in one place behind a line. And at their meetings, they have a testimony table for the people who filed the complaint against the officers. And I had been insisting and continued to insist that my camera should be able to set up where I can see the face of the person filing the appeal, because the whole story that we're telling when we're trying to videotape those meetings is that person's story. And we had a meeting with the CRC, and members of the DOJ were there, your chair was there, former members, some members of your committee who are also, and former members of the CRC were there, and we discussed this together. Collectively, how can we come to a compromise? And the Bureau was there. Did I say that already? I hope I did. And then we came to a compromise position where they agreed that the cameras should be able to be where I can see the faces. And it's not just for me, it's for KGW. Anybody with a video camera should be able to see those faces. And that it was reasonable to have audience members sit up close to the committee because they don't have microphones like you do and it's hard to hear. And at the end, the chief, who had refused to send officers back to those meetings because of security concerns, said that those ground rules sounded good to him and he was planning to send the officers to the meetings now. Because we had a discussion, we talked about it as a community together. We're being told about this rule to have a filming area back here. These meetings are consistently being interrupted, not by members of the audience, but by discussions and arguments with members of the audience. And I really think it would behoove you to have a discussion about these ground rules with us, with the community. You're sitting in these seats because the community created these seats for you to sit in. And we need to be part of that discussion. And if I were filming and I was asked to sit there, I would have refused also, because I'd be filming the backs of the members of the committee sitting at that table. It's not reasonable to ask people to sit in that corner to film your meeting. And the guidelines that were read about the Attorney General said it has to be reasonable. So I really, you know, I think that if there are behaviors you need to address, if you don't like cameras being too close to people, that was part of the discussion we had. If you don't like people moving around, that was part of the discussion we had. You don't want people being blocked, that was part of the discussion we had.
Time's up, Mr. Handler.
I just want to add, the New York Times article didn't interview any community members, particularly people with mental health issues, and so I find it offensive that it's on the table out there with no footnotes to it. Thank you.
I can see Pat Adams.
That's a hard act to follow. I've been attending these COAB meetings now and some subcommittee meetings for a few months. And I keep coming back because I like this group. And I like this group. And I like Keith. I like it all. And I like the leadership. I like how you work together, and I like how you are together. And I like the work, attending to the policies which guide police behavior. But I propose that the next step is to create new policies which prevent the Portland Police from sending African Americans to prison. It comes to me that this board has the mission, the ability, and the power to respond to this incredible injustice, which indeed cries out for a response. When I asked a Hillsborough police lieutenant about the relationship between police and citizens, he recommended this book, The Lucifer Effect. It was written by a professor who conducted the Stanford prison experiment in August of 1971. The professor recruited some 20 volunteers and divided them arbitrarily into guards and prisoners. To each group, he gave a uniform, and he told the guards, control the prisoners. He expected that the experiment would last for 2 weeks, but the level of abuse intensified so quickly that he had to shut it down in only 10 days. He admits that he was not the one who stopped it. He was so consumed by the experiment that he couldn't see how abusively out of control it had become. It was his wife who happened by for lunch on that 10th day. When she saw what was happening, she said to him, "Stop. Stop this now." I think that's my 2 minutes. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you, Pat. If you don't know about the Stanford experiment, it's an important piece of research done some years ago. You may want to look it up. Jan Bertluski? Oh, I'm sorry, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Jonathan Bedlinski, and I work with Cascade Behavioral Health Care. In the interest of time, I'll keep my comments very brief. But we did want to say that we are eager to contribute to the ongoing development of the Portland Police Bureau. We really appreciate the work this committee is doing, and some of you have no doubt noticed that we fairly consistently show up and sit in the audience and observe. We're going to continue to participate by reviewing the policies coming forward and looking for more ways to contribute to this effort to enhance the relationships and interactions between Portland Police Bureau and individuals who have lived experience with mental health challenges and also individuals of color. Thank you for this work you're doing.
Thank you, John. Thank you. I have Linda? And Charles. Oh, God.
I want to thank all the COAB volunteers and other people who volunteer in police accountability work. It's, I guess, appropriate that I'm testifying after Mr. Handelman has talked about the CRC and after the gentleman from Cascadia has talked about mental health. There's an ongoing criminal case regarding the March 30th or 31st CRC meeting. I know the CRC is related to your work because it's touched on in a few paragraphs of the settlement work. And many things have happened at the CRC. It's interesting that the CRC is a 7-person body, and it contains a former prosecuting attorney. Would any of the former prosecuting attorneys in the COAB please raise their hand? I promise not to target you. So I think that while my conduct in the last couple months has not always been the best, it has brought to the surface serious community issues about community belief in police accountability and police commitment to that work. I made a joking comment to, there are members from the police department, obviously here in this room, who seem to feel fairly safe, and I commented to one of them that they should get a medal for bravery, because the current leadership of the police department has put forth evidence of either dishonesty or cowardice. Police are people who are trained to engage with active shooters, and yet they've chosen to snub and insult people that do police accountability work as part of the government. Not just activists, but people that are part of the settlement agreement have had Police Chief O'Shea thumb his nose at them. And the mayor has whitewashed it with a comment saying, "Oh, I wish there'd been better communication." And earlier we've had remarks about if the work that y'all have done has been given any consideration. Fortunately, we had a representative who came up here and she explained that they are working on your recommendation. They're processing some complex recommendations. But I hope that you'll consider the COAB, Community Oversight Advisory Board. And at any time, unfortunately, in addition to the committee work you all are facing, you may have to help the community maintain control and influence over the politicians who some people would say don't have a serious commitment to supporting your work or the work of the Citizens Review Committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Okay, we're at 7:28. We're due to end at 8. Dr. Rosenbaum was to give a presentation this evening, and we had allowed an hour for it. We got 8:30? Oh, okay, I'm off. Good. All right, so we have an hour, so let's take a 5-minute break. Please come back to your seats so that we may resume the meeting. Okay. I think that before we started, Philip had something he wanted to say.
Yeah. Thanks, Kathleen. I wanted to respond to Dan's comment with the filming. I feel as a COAB member that we do need to address this topic, and because the community members are important to us, and I just think that it'd be a great idea if we could have a discussion around this topic and figure out how to, or what would be the best way to go forward with it. I mean, filming, people have a right to film, and we as COAB members also have a right to feel safe. And so kind of navigating that, I don't want to ignore this topic or this discussion. I know that we care about it. We care about the people and their concerns, and I don't want to have that feeling derailed from the community standpoint. So thank you for letting me share my comment.
Thank you, Philip. I'm going to introduce Dr. Rosenbaum right now, and we're going to get on with the rest of the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, again, I'm honored to be here. This is a great group, and I'm still recovering from being sick for 2 weeks, so my brain is, if I start saying things I'm not accountable for them tonight, I'll try to just rely on my instincts as a professor to kind of give an overview of things. If we can go to the next slide, somehow. There we go. I'm going to cover these things if I can, and then open it up at the very end to have some time to get your input and ideas and feedback and criticism, etc. I wanted to give you a slightly bigger historical context to understand some of the factors that have constrained police-community relations over the years. So I'm going to go back a long time here. And maybe it'll give everybody many of you know some of this stuff, but a better appreciation of how far the police have come in some ways and how far we still have to go because we keep repeating some of these cycles. We don't learn from history as well as we should. And all of this sort of is in the context of police legitimacy, and which is, I want to talk about and define that as well tonight, and public trust in general. So, talk about the history. I'm I'm going to talk quite a bit about community policing because that's how this is linked to community engagement, which is a big movement in the 1980s. A bunch of us wrote books about it and evaluated it. And then it declined in the 1990s to around the turn of the century with new crime control strategies, and I'll talk about that. And then now it's kind of back in some ways in this kind of post-Ferguson world. Excuse me. But these cycles all involve a loss of public trust and confidence in the police and issues of legitimacy and how we've dealt with that over the years. It's interesting. And I have a proposal. I presented this to the President's Task Force on a different way of doing policing today, and then we want to open it up for discussion. And I apologize, I am actually not going to talk about the President's Task Force. If you'd like to at some point, well, it's all related here. I will get to it actually in some of my notes here in my slides. But I did, as chair of the Division of Policing for the American Society of Criminology, which is a group that includes all policing scholars worldwide, I created an ad hoc committee that advised the President's Task Force. And we gave a lot of recommendations last year. And most all of them were incorporated into their final report, which was nice. I think you have that report. It's on the COAB website, and it'd be good to read that. So let's move on to the next. So here are some of the periods of American policing. We call it the political era. Policing really started in this country in the 1840s, mostly through industrialization, big cities on the East Coast, and lots of Irish people like myself out drinking in bars, and they need, after working in the industry for 12 hours, 15 hours a day, and there was disorder and chaos, so they needed urban police. That's a short story. But that period was characterized, many people have written about the history of policing, as a very political and corrupt time. Police were basically owned by the local aldermen and commissions, and they worked for them and rounded up votes, and they were abusive as well. And so by the turn of the century, about 1900, there was definitely a reform movement going on. It wasn't just in policing, it was actually with government in general. If you're a historian, you know that. Actually, Teddy Roosevelt was one of those guys. He was the head of the New York Police Department at that time. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. And he was hated by the police, by the way. So out of that, there were lots of calls for reform. But it didn't really happen until, actually it was like 1931 when the Wickersham Commission, so you'll see in history too, there's all these history of commissions that are created and presidential task forces. That was Hoover's task force actually in 1929. The guy who chaired it, August Vollmer, went on to be sort of the figurehead of modern policing and this kind of professional reform period of policing from the 1930s to 1970. That committee put out a report in 1931 with 14 different reports actually, and it kind of shocked the nation because there was all these claims of this practice of third degree, which is basically, using pain techniques to interrogate people, kind of like waterboarding, something modern you can talk about. But anyway, the reform group, though, basically wanted the politics out of policing. That was their primary concern in the 1930s. And August Vollmer, who was a professor at Berkeley, but also police chief, pushed for a number of things. Higher education in policing, more female police officers, that's an interesting one. Crime laboratories, other things too, like bicycle patrols. Community relations, he did push for. But at the same time, what happened to undermine some of this in some ways, it both helped policing and hurt it, was in the 1930s, cars were introduced and police were taken off the streets. In the early period, they were on foot patrol, but it was not a good foot patrol. The cars, one of the adverse effects there was it removed the police from the community. To this day, we still have that, where they, on the other hand, they're more in the community in the sense that they're in people's homes by responding to calls for service, but they're not in the community. and they travel through the community. Also, there was a classic management book that had a big influence by O.W. Wilson in the 40s, creating structures for police and special units, and there was always the sort of quasi-military arrangement, but it was more of a, it was professionalizing police in terms of the order and rules and regulations, and also the mission. The mission was clear that it was crime fighting, and you kind of, if any of you are old enough, you remember Dragnet and Sergeant Friday. Yeah, just the facts, ma'am. He didn't want to listen to the victims' stories or anything, but it was all about catching the bad guys. The community error, what happened is that I'll go through this a little bit, but the reform professional error, they failed in a big way to be professional, in the sense that they had the uniforms, they had the cars, they had the equipment, they had everything, but they were never trained in anything about dealing with community, dealing with protest. And along came, the civil rights protests, the war in Vietnam, women's movement, all these things in the 60s, and they handled that very poorly. And we'll talk about that in a second, but essentially that led to another crisis of legitimacy. The riots in the 60s and the protests and the way that was mishandled, and and so again, what did we get? We got the President's Task Force, the President's Crime Commission in 1967. It's an interesting book to read, recommending diversity in policing and all kinds of different things. The need for community policing basically came out of that. Also, the Kerner Commission, violence went out of control in the 60s too, so that created another crisis of legitimacy, because the police had led the public to believe that they were in charge of violence and they could control it. All right, and so we then had the community error, which I want to spend the most time on. Technology error, I call it that. I wrote an article labeling it that, because we just have such an enormous influence of technology, starting in the 1990s, but more recently, in the way that it shapes crime fighting and all of that. And so but that, I'm going to argue, that period also had some major problems and resulted in what happened since 2014. And it's that style of policing which we still do that's creating the problems for us. So let's move on to whatever else is on here. There we go. Oh, I do want to just get to not assume anything with everybody. What is legitimacy? We can debate that, but Tom Tyler, which I think he borrows from Max Weber to some extent, Tom's a psychologist like myself, so he calls it a psychological property of an authority, institution, or social arrangement that leads those connected to it to believe that it is appropriate, proper, and just. So, the big thing here is if the community feels the police are legitimate, that means they trust the police to do a good job on behalf of the community. We, in a democratic society, we were very reluctant, actually, in the 1800s to create a police force, we refused to have a national police force. But, after just coming away from the king in Britain, we didn't want to have that much control in the police. So legitimacy really means if I turn my back, I can have confidence that 99 out of 100 times the police will do the right thing. They'll not abuse their authority. They'll protect the Constitution. They'll do what's best for all Americans, and do it in a professional manner with high integrity. Let's go to the next. You guys helped design this, the public community survey last year, and one of the statements was the Portland police are trustworthy, and this is the percent that agree. Those are the numbers. You have, as usual, national polls show this too, more support from whites than you'd have from other communities of color. Interesting, least support among Native Americans. We can talk about that sometime. But, there's obviously room for higher scores here. I think the Portland Police Bureau has suffered because of incidents in the last few years and the reforms and all that. But I think with this process, there's plenty of room for improvement, but at least they're starting to have baseline data. So let's go on. Let's talk briefly about what undermines legitimacy. This has all been documented through years of historical work and police research. This isn't telling you anything probably, but corruption scandals, excuse me, and cover-ups are a big part of the problem. And we have a documented history of most of those that have, but now they're, of course, more visible with all the social media. The causing and mishandling civil disorder, many of in the 60s and 50s and rioting was often caused by police shootings. And up until the mid-1980s, you could shoot anybody. Oh, yeah, Philip, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Two things.
Yeah.
Because the rubric you had up there talked about the whites and the breakdown of races, and
yes,
it didn't talk about people with mental health issues and their trust or mistrust in police, and that percentage wasn't there. And people with disabilities, that wasn't there also.
Yeah. Well, sure. Well, good point. Again, I'm going to pull illness on this. I basically put all this together in the last 48 hours when my brain wasn't even working on them, taking all these medications and stuff. So I had to run these analysis myself on the computer, and that must say something about me, so I apologize. I think we can break it down that way. There was a question on the survey that asked if you were affiliated, or I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but there was a question that had something to do with mental health. If you were a member of the mental health community or something like that, it was pretty vague. Lived experience? Okay. So we can certainly get you that. Sorry. So back to this, other factors that undermine legitimacy. The cover-up thing, by the way, is still a problem, and it's a long. I spend a lot of time with my students talking about these things. Why do cover-ups still occur? And we have one in various cities right now, including the one I live in. But it's related to solidarity and the feeling that no one's got their back, their bosses don't, the community's against us, and we have to protect it. But it's all related to this larger problem that we're talking about. I'm not trying to justify it, I'm just trying to explain it. Excessive force, we know what that's about. Discrimination and profiling of groups. So in the 90s, lots of work, we've had a lot of research on profiling. I've done my own analysis of 2.5 million cases a year in Illinois of police stops, and it's consistent with all the other studies that there's definitely evidence of a pattern of stopping minorities more, but more importantly, searching their car more often. That's a consistent pattern as well. And of course, the other consistent finding is finding less contraband in minority cars than whites. So there's no justification really for, but anyway, I'm getting off the topic. Discrimination and profiling, history of poor relations. This is really what I wanted to allude to more. Let's go on and with communities of color, all the way from the slave patrols, which arguably are the first in this police forces in America, to Jim Crow enforcement, and then to the aggressive crime fighting we have today.
Would you repeat that, Dennis?
What I just said? Yeah, actually, I'd like to go on and show pictures of what I'm talking about. So let's go on and, so here, can you see this? Is there too much light up here? This is a department store in Mobile, Alabama in 1956. Can you see? It's important to understand that the troubled relationship between the police and the African American community goes all the way back to the slave patrols in the 1700s, but I'm going to skip over all that and slavery and everything else and jump ahead to the 1950s, which some of us can even remember. And it might, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We have to remember that while in the 50s and 60s, we're still in this professional era of policing, you know, they had the uniforms, they had the guns, they had everything, they had policies, they had roll calls, but their job in the South was to enforce Jim Crow laws, as well as other things. But we've forgotten that. You know, it's like, this is just a good example. But let's go on to the next page. Here's the next example. You probably know who this is, right? Rosa Parks being arrested and booked for sitting in the white section of the bus. She was in the front 10. You're not allowed to sit in the front 10 seats. You're supposed to move to the back. And Jim Crow enforcement, the police had to do their job. Again, this isn't just a reflection on police, it's a reflection on America. So police are usually a reflection of America. They have the same prejudices, and they're doing their job. So also this is actually what really began the civil rights protests of the 50s that ultimately led to the next crisis of legitimacy in policing and the presidential commissions in the 60s and the calls for community policing. All right, so let's go on. One more, I can't let up, right? Civil rights marches from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama in 1965. Now, this is the police, society didn't tell them to do this, maybe they did, but this is their own mishandling and inexperience with being professional so the reformed police were not so reformed and professional. Again, they weren't trained in this, but also they weren't trained in educating in protecting First Amendment rights. There was no community-oriented leadership. Community didn't really mean anything other than trouble. You know, and then you've got the highest-ranking guy in the FBI out doing surveillance on everybody. Anyway, so there was mistreatment in the 60s, big time, and Chicago police did a bad job at the Democratic National Convention in 1968, as you may recall. That was the war protesters. That wasn't the civil rights protests, but they're on camera on national television just beating the whatever out of people. So, again, and rising crime during this time. So let's move on. This all led to the need for new approaches. Let me talk about, where are you? You're on, let's back. There's at least 4 ways. I'm going to try to go through this real quickly so we have time to talk. That community policing, which was started really in the 80s and was fomenting in the 70s, is different from the older professional model. And so let me just go through these 4 quickly. Go on to the next one, please. So philosophically, citizen input was valued for once. Isn't that interesting? In a democratic society where policing should be for the people and by the people, we began to realize that was important. Also, I should add that valuing community crime prevention and informal social control, actually in the 70s, before community policing took off, there was a widespread national engagement in preventing crime. It probably stemmed by the community. And it probably stemmed from the massive growth in crime and violence in the 60s that scared everybody. So all these neighborhood watches and citizen patrols and things started. But if you want to read this stuff, I've written an 85-page review of the literature on all the things that citizens do to protect themselves from crime, from individual to household to collective neighborhood efforts. But the bigger thing here that I want to stress that we learned, but we've kind of forgotten again, is that crime is not controlled by the police. It's controlled by an informal network of social processes at the community level, by the parents, by families, by schools, by peer groups, by the churches, the ministry, communicating what values are important and watching over young people to make sure that they're doing the right thing, so to speak. So there's group pressure at various levels. When the informal social controls decline, then we resort to formal social controls like the police. Anyway, we also realized that community policing was all about a broader police function. The crime fighting was still there, but we're going way beyond that. 80% of the calls that police get are not even related to crime, really. And people tend to forget that. And so, but they had a role in helping victims, and they had a role in reducing fear of crime. That became a huge topic. How can they improve the quality of neighborhood life? What's the role of the police in that? There's a lot of talk about this. And then personalized neighborhood-based policing. We wanted in community policing, the theory was you needed police officers that would be engaged with the local community and know the community, work with the community, and that people actually wanted to know their police officer, and that services and police response would be tailored to those communities, depending on what the needs were. Very localized. Now that's problematic. We can have a long talk about that with changing neighborhoods and gentrifying neighborhoods and integrated neighborhoods. You have, who's the community? Police were troubled by that too. Who do we, who's representing the community here in this group? And I see that around the country where, you know, you've got the new gentrified people coming in, calling the police saying, you know, those old guys on the street over there are making noise at night. You know, anyway, okay. Strategically, how is it different? So the patrol function was supposed to, more contact, face-to-face contact. What does that mean? Foot patrols, bike patrols, door-to-door. There was community meetings. There was a lot experimented with in the 80s and 90s. We did experiments around the country and different things, sending out newsletters, door-to-door visits, police officers knocking on your door, introducing themselves. That really worked effectively in some cities, but we found it didn't always work depending on what the neighborhood was. I remember in Houston in 1985, I think that when they knocked on the doors in Latino neighborhoods, because there were many immigrants, you could hear people were always running out the back door. So it wasn't like an invited thing. You know, it was just something we never thought of. Police were trying to be friendly. But now we've gotten back to where police are serving as immigration officers. It's very interesting. Differential response. Don't be a prisoner of 911. We'll talk more about that later. Geographic focus. This is big. Focusing on the beat, the neighborhood, not so much on the shift. Police are assigned to shifts, and they get together, and they're the midnight shift, and they have a roll call. Then they all go into different neighborhoods. And so, but if there's communication across shifts about the neighborhood and what the problems and issues are there, some cities have tried to do that better than others. Focusing on prevention. Starting up new relationships with young people, with schools, with others to prevent crime. And not just be incident-driven policing. Problem-oriented policing started up then. Incident-driven policing means we're just going to take calls, and one at a time, they're all different, they're all distinct, and just keep doing our job till our shift is over. Problem-oriented policing is more about, no, a bunch of incidents that keep repeating themselves in this area or every Friday night, that's a problem. Let's deal with the underlying conditions of that problem and address them. And so this became, let's figure out what that is. And that's where problem-oriented policing came in. And I have my own vision of the sort of, at that time, I used to talk about how every police chief should have a PhD in criminology, because we want them to explain to the community what is crime, what causes it, how it's, you know, there's so much to be known if you try to get to the underlying conditions, or even to try to understand the patterns of crime. I don't know if in Portland, for example, the police department or anyone explains what the pattern of crime is on the max or on certain areas, and what can be done to protect yourself and that sort of thing. So, or the fact that, you know, we throw all these problems on the doorstep of the police, mental health and homelessness and, excuse me, I'm in Portland, houselessness, and all these things, and we expect the police to be skilled enough to deal with all these things when other social institutions and government agencies have failed to help out. Let's go on. Tactical is the last, maybe create positive interactions with the public. This is part of what community policing is about on the streets and at meetings. Engaging the community in crime prevention, I've talked about that. Building partnerships with organizations. So the co-production, we talked a lot in the 80s and 90s about the co-production of public safety. As I said earlier, it's not just a police problem, it's a community, it's other institutions should be, but the police should have played a major role and did in some places, and I think, you know, I don't know how well they do in different cities that I haven't studied carefully, but in facilitating this dialogue and bringing people together, different partners, and and then engaging in problem-oriented policing. I know that Portland actually has done quite a bit of that, and we won't talk about that right this minute, but let's go on to organizational differences. In the end, yes, the push was for decentralized, that would empower officers to work with people in the neighborhoods. Many cities created neighborhood police stations where they just worked out of there, but also giving them the freedom to solve local problems and develop programs and that sort of thing. Management was supposed to seek, encourage, and create a culture. I guess the culture thing is the most important, that values the community. And we've heard comments here where people don't appreciate that yet, that works with the community. So you want your officers to value the importance of community, but you have to start at home. So what I still see going on is the need for police to value their own employees and to seek their input and their views and not just be a top-down place. One last thing, information imperative. A lot of pressure. Back in this time, we were just seeing the power of computers and the need for surveys and that sort of thing, and doing crime analysis by neighborhood. Let's move on now to the problematic transition. So what happened with community policing? Well, it died an interesting death. This sort of technology and CompStat kind of took over, I think, without really asking the community, which was supposedly their new partners. The police chiefs, and some of these were progressive and innovative police chiefs, became enamored with two things. One was new technology. You know, we were all living under the gods of Microsoft and Apple and all of that. And the other was the maturing research community. Up until that point, we had probably done a couple big studies of policing in the 70s and early 80s, but by the 90s, we were doing dozens of studies of policing. And we knew what worked and what didn't work and all that. And we actually have to take some of the blame for the way this has turned out. By the way, when I said don't need community, if you have CompStat, does anyone not know what CompStat is? May I just say quickly? Okay. So 1994, the New York Police Department started CompStat, which is realizing that they could use their computers to deploy people. So CompStat means computer-driven statistics. So they analyzed all the crime and found out where the hotspots were and the crime rates, but they held the police commanders accountable for the crime rates in New York in their precincts. So for the first time in the history of policing, there actually was accountability up for something, which was interesting, and everyone applauded that. It spread like wildfire across the country to where just about every place was doing it. But again, the focus was only on crime. And I forgot to say earlier, well, I did say that crime continued to be the only thing that was important. And you don't need the community and their input if you can just pull up a bunch of crime statistics and decide, oh, the burglaries are happening over here, the violent crime here. I want you guys to go over here. I want you to go over here. And they felt they could run policing without community input. That's my analysis. Broken windows theory became, George Kelling, good friend of mine, he convinced New York to really push that model. It's an interesting theory that basically if you arrest people for minor infractions and misdemeanors, urinating in public and different things, you could affect more serious crime. And the data on that are mixed, by the way, but New York took that so seriously that it meant stopping everyone that moved, and the stop and frisk stuff, which they've just recently gotten in trouble for. The emphasis was on reducing crime through aggressive directed patrols and Terry stops. That's what I'm referring to here. Now, where do I blame the researchers and people like myself? Evidence-based policing. That's what we still talk about today. And I do believe in evidence-based policing. Science should play a major role in policing, but the research showed that the most effective strategies for reducing crime, again, all about reducing crime, was to deploy officers to hotspots of crime. Crime is not randomly distributed. There's hotspots of crime. We know that. And so they did that. and the nation has done that, and that seemed like the right thing to do, but no one looked at the collateral damage for this and on the community. So let's just go quickly to that. It's the stop and frisk thing. Certainly there's discriminatory stops, and people, look at the New York case. Young people of color mostly are getting hit. The potential criminogenic effects, I'm going to talk about that in a second. Criminogenic meaning it actually increases crime instead of decreases it. And then the negative interactions with the public of the searching and stopping, no one really thought about the implications of that for police legitimacy. By the way, footnote, don't get me wrong, investigatory stops should not be excluded from policing, in my opinion, but they should not be given so much attention either. But you do need them to investigate crimes. And you can't take that authority away from the police, in my opinion. Let's just go on to the criminogenic effects of arresting juveniles. We know that arresting juveniles increases the probability of them dropping out of high school. Wow, that's pretty powerful. It's not just correlational. There's studies longitudinally showing that the arrest comes before they drop out rather than the other way around. So we always thought it was the other way around. But dropping out of high school, we also know increases your probability of unemployment, and we also know that it increases the probability of future offending. So the bottom line is arresting juveniles should be done as a last resort, and we need to work with other agencies to find alternatives for them, restorative justice. You can arrest the hell out of adults, it doesn't have any impact on their behavior. All right. They're just back. Yeah. No, go ahead.
Arresting juveniles, arresting young people, 10, 12, 13 years old. It really stops them from being able to even have jobs, even create anything. It really almost stops them in their tracks. They just drop out of high school, end up becoming what you call a criminal, which they're probably not criminals, but what else do they know to do now? And they got the track record, or as we say in the neighborhood, they're on paper now, so they can't really get a job necessarily.
Right. And we're not saying they didn't commit crimes. Sometimes they have.
I'm not saying they didn't commit it, but one thing about when some crimes have been committed, for example, when you mentioned community policing, I liked it. Almost small town policing sometimes where a police officer might see you doing something wrong, and he or she may take you home, or they may say, you get out of here, and don't, it won't be a criminal offense. It won't be handcuff you and take you to jail and book you. But with this new policing that we just talked about, it's like handcuff you and take you to jail and booking you, and there goes your stuff. There goes your college education possibly. Or there goes your house probably.
Right. You do miss school, going to court, and various things. And the criminologists argue that the underlying mechanism is mostly self-labeling. You label yourself. Well, if I'm in court and your friends label you, you must be you must be a criminal. Yeah.
Took a picture.
And it's self-fulfilling. Right. Well, yeah. Okay. So let's go on. One other quick thing about the potential adverse. Back up one, please. I didn't say this enough, but hotspots this is where the criminologists weren't thinking this through. They tend to be low-income neighborhoods and neighborhoods of color. And again, it's not about racist cops. I think we missed the picture on that. It's about race. If you want to call it racist, it's racist policies and leadership about institutional. The young cops, they're just doing their job. And if you put more cops into a minority neighborhood or a low-income neighborhood, they're going to do their job, which is more arrests, and that's just going to happen because that's what they're trained to do. It's about arrest. All right, in hotspots, officers are more likely to be aggressive, disrespectful, and use physical restraints. We now have research to document that pretty carefully. But I do want to say, again, it's not that easy. It's just bad cops going in, beating up on people. My experience over 30, 40 years of studying this is it's a two-way street. The police respond. If you ride along, I've spent thousands of hours riding with police in many cities, and it's a tough job in some neighborhoods, and the people are much more disrespectful of the police as well. That's what we're talking about here today, too. And so some of these younger cops, one of my grad students, I told her I'm studying the life course of police and how they cope and adjust and change and she was 3 years assigned as a Chicago police officer in the toughest neighborhood in town at midnights. And I said, has that changed your life at all? She's like 25 years old. And she laughed hysterically at me. She said, are you kidding? I'm not even the same person anymore. Mm-hmm. I've worked this job 3 years, she said, and at no time for all the things I've done has anyone ever thanked me for what I did. So I mean, you know, it's a two-way street is all I'm saying. But the police do up their game. They're more aggressive. They search people more. They disrespect people more, and that's what goes on. Okay, so let's. Here's a failure to learn from history. The Kerner Commission report in 1968 says that aggressive preventive patrol in high crime districts, we failed to consider the tension-creating effects. And I thought, wow, we're just doing that over again. Okay, let's go on. How do we strengthen legitimacy? I better go fast because I know you're going to stop me soon here. The big message from me, at least from my angle, is we have hundreds of studies now in more than 8 countries that show that the main driving force, one of the main ones behind legitimacy is procedural justice, which is really this notion that it's not what the police, the outcome, whether they arrested you, gave you a ticket, whatever, it's how they treated you. It's the process. You know, it's like, on my own studies, I could show you lots of charts that show that, you know, if you give someone a ticket when you stop them, yes, it lowers their evaluation of you as a police officer. But the big thing is you can regain that and add points to it if you are polite and respectful, but you lose a ton of points when you give a ticket and you know, throw it at them or tell them, you know, straighten up your act or whatever. Let's go on to what procedural justice is. So there's many components. We'd like to see these measured. I've spent the last couple of years trying to validate these measures. This is asking the community how they feel about their interactions they've had with the police. There's 4 components that really stick out in the research. Voice. Does the officer give that person a voice, allow that person to talk, let them tell their side of the story, or do they just, you know, order them to do something? Respect, treating them with dignity and respect. All human beings, whether you're a gang member or the worst person in the world, need and want to be treated with dignity. Neutrality. They need to feel that you're treating them even-handedly, fairly. You're collecting all the facts when you make a decision. It's interesting, by the way, the research, and my own research and others, shows that whites are much more interested in being treated respectfully, and African Americans are much more interested in being treated fairly. That's because of all the racial profiling and things like that. Concern is the big one that is harder for police to achieve, but is important in this model. You care about their welfare. You actually show some concern or compassion, or I've added empathy to this, which is a hard thing. You have to believe that people are victimized in life conditions as well as by crime. And explain your actions. All of us as adults, we can never use this with adults or even kids to say, do it because I told you so, or stay over there. I don't need to give you an explanation why I'm asking for this. Yes, you do. And so we have lots of evidence. So legitimacy is enhanced when authority figures behave in these ways. All right, let's move on. And here are the consequences. Lots of studies documenting this. When there's a lack of legitimacy, the public is less willing to cooperate, less willing to comply with requests, more likely to file complaints, lawsuits, on, and even disobey the law. If you don't believe that the legitimacy of the police and the government, you don't see any need to obey the law yourself. And you distrust them, you're fearful of them, you're less satisfied. I do want to say quickly that the failure to comply with requests is what ends up escalating force a lot of times. So, you know, and police, someone's committed a crime, does something, you need to put them in handcuffs. Many of the times they can't get them in handcuffs because they refuse. So there's a lot of interesting dynamics here. Let me just tell you real quickly, in 153 cities where I've studied this, procedural justice, when I combine all those things about voice and stuff, the bigger the department, the less procedural justice they exhibit on the streets. Maybe complicated, there's, you know, tougher crime areas and more poverty and things like that that make it. Let's go on one more just to show you that inside of big cities, it varies by neighborhood. Here's Chicago. This isn't procedural justice, it's how satisfied the citizens were with the encounter, but it's highly correlated with procedural justice. I was too busy to put that table up here. It ranges from 52% ratings of the police department in one district up to 80% in another. So procedural justice and satisfaction vary by neighborhood. And it turns out hotspots and high crime areas, of course, are less satisfied and feel less procedural justice, as you might expect. Let's just skip over. This just, I measured force, whether the officer raised their voice, threatened physical force, used force, searched you. This is kind of an inverse. Little departments are more aggressive, as are big departments. But here's another footnote for all the feminists in the audience here. Agencies with more female officers on the workforce have lower aggressive policing scores. Yeah, sorry. I think I'm yeah, go ahead.
So you've been talking about Chicago in comparison. Many of your stats include Chicago, so I'm just curious, where is the metric for Portland? Do we know any more in this regard about Portland and the analysis? Has it been done similarly for Portland?
Well, we are hoping to encourage Portland to do something like this, as that one of the outcome measures we've recommended in our reports, that they do what we call a contact survey, and that's what this is. People who've had contact with the police recently, how they evaluate that encounter. It could be used to evaluate the new training programs. It can be used to evaluate changes in the police culture, et cetera. So yes, we'd like to see that done. Excuse me. I do want to, go ahead.
How do you plan to encourage that, I guess?
Pardon?
So you mentioned that you would want to do this and encourage the police to change. I'm just curious, the encouragement part, how do you plan to encourage them to make that
Well,
change?
we've had some meetings, and we intend to have more. It's kind of related to the settlement agreement. We don't want to, we're going to work out the extent to which this is part of the settlement agreement. I argue that it is relevant, that it's relevant to the measures they need to demonstrate effectiveness in training. And so whether it's just a recommendation or it's a strong recommendation is still kind of up in the air. But, you guys were welcome to have your opinion on that.
Got 8 minutes, Dennis.
Okay, so I do want to jump ahead just quickly, if that's okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just what are the solutions? Now, let's skip over, we need to, back up, I'm sorry. We need to surgically do street stops and not so frequently. I want to argue for this respectful, engaged policing. So, and what does this include? Positive stops, questions unrelated to interrogations, relationship building, problem solving. How do you do this? I'm asking us to get the police out of their cars and back into the community. This is what I said to the President's task force. Yes, they need to be in cars for certain things. What are the benefits of this? Let's go on, and then I'm going to stop talking. If you get out of your car, you can build rapport and trust with the community. You need them to get to know you, and you get to know them. You can learn the social landscape. You can figure out what the dynamics are. You won't be stopping kids that aren't in trouble. You'll be surgically stopping kids who are the troublemakers, but you'll also be having positive contacts. It's mostly a positive contact thing. And working to solve neighborhood problems. Portland does have a program that's related to this, and haven't studied it carefully yet, but we'll come back to that. But what it needs to be enhanced is more training around a bunch of things: interpersonal communication skills, procedural justice, implicit bias, all of those things. Can I just show one chart here quickly? We asked this on the community-wide survey in Portland last year. Do you know the first or last name of any Portland police officer who patrols in your neighborhood now? So only 7% do that. I don't know, I work with the police in my community. I don't know any of them. I bet you, how many of you don't know the names of any? Yeah, a lot of you, right? Well, maybe you do. Now you can't, police aren't allowed to participate in this. Anyway, and was there one more chart after that? Oh, this is if you've seen Portland police on foot in your neighborhood. Basic, bottom line is 75% have not seen. You know, this is probably true in every city in America, by the way. I'm not picking on the Portland Police Bureau. All right, I'm going to stop there. Let's jump ahead, keep a couple slides to, back up one, and then we'll stop. This will be the last. You know, people will say this is expensive and you can't do it. I would argue that you need to demarket 911. By that I mean the public calls 911 for all kinds of things that aren't related to emergencies. I think Portland does have a 311 system. I just learned that tonight. You can cite people in lieu of arrest. This is something that's going on now nationwide. Maybe you're doing that here. I haven't talked to the police yet about it. Be creative with your priorities and fund the police adequately if they're using the funds for these kinds of programs. So let's.
Dennis, I hate.
Let's stop. Let's get community input.
I need to get a decision from the COAB as to what they would like to do at this point.
No, I would
We're
like
about
to hear
3
them.
minutes out. We can adjourn the meeting, and people who want to hear the rest of this can stay, or we can extend the meeting for 15 minutes.
Go to your ideas, that one.
Okay.
And let's get their reaction. I've said enough. I can go on.
Well, I need to extend the meeting or adjourn it and let people stay.
Well,
So do I have a motion for either?
I motion to extend the time.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor to extend the time by 15 minutes? 10 minutes? All right. Give me a time. 10 minutes? Okay. Can I get just a hand vote on those who agree to extend the time? And I'm not. Those who disagree? One or two? Okay. Did somebody count?
Only one person disagreed, so I think that.
No, I think you had
it
two.
passes.
Did we have one? Okay. So I think it's passed. Motion's passed. Okay. Extend the meeting by 10 minutes. That's what you've got. So you're asking for?
Well, yeah, no, that's just, there's a million ways to engage with the police. I was just proposing a strategy for thinking about what they do differently so that they're not in this 1960s model of just driving around and responding to calls, that they're proactively out building relationships with the public, getting to know them and that sort of thing. But there's also, many other possibilities through not just one-on-one contacts, collectively engaging at meetings, through electronically, through communicating that way. But I think you guys, or I'd be happy to just take anybody's response.
I'd like to hear anybody from the COAB who has questions. Rochelle has a question. Philip has a question. V has a question or an observation. Somewhere in your slides, I don't remember exactly where, was the word transparency.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if you could comment on that a little more relative to community policing. And I know you weren't going to talk about the White House's 21st century policing, but on their project of open data.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, there's many ways that transparency, my experience for the last 40 years is there has not been enough transparency in general in policing, that they it's a secret society about the data. But there are things that they legitimately should retain, ongoing investigations, things like that could be compromised. But one of the things that, as you know, in this latest crisis of legitimacy, starting with Ferguson, is the failure to quickly disclose the facts as they know them. Ferguson was a disaster in that regard. But getting things out, Chicago's gone through that recently. The McDonald case last year that was 16 shots, the videos, the things, it was months and months and no prosecution, a year passed, yeah. So people aren't learning that lesson quickly enough. When I see progressive police chiefs get together, they talk about that and how you can't, whatever you know, they need to know kind of thing. The other thing is there's different levels of transparency. I think working with the community on a neighborhood level and you should together work out what strategies of policing are best for that neighborhood and that community, and not just come in with strategies where people don't know what the police are really up to in your neighborhood. The open data project out of the White House is an attempt to get a number of cities, I think they may have 40 or 50 now, that agree to share data about force and various things, complaints. Our ad hoc committee, I testified to the task force that they needed to develop a national database on use of force. The problem is there's no consistent measures of these things nationwide. So it's really hard, as someone asked earlier, what's the per capita rate in Portland versus other cities? People are measuring these things differently. So until we agree nationally, and I'm working hard to do that nationally, but I think these cities are at least stepping forward, these chiefs, and saying, we have nothing to hide here. I think that there's two different approaches there. A lot of chiefs are nervous about that because they do lose their jobs every 2.5 years.
Would you recommend that Portland participate?
I haven't, but I don't know if they are. Do you know if Portland's in the data? I think they volunteered, didn't they, to be in it?
I know we do the National Platform one. We did with Center for Policing Equity one. I have to look at this up.
Okay, yeah, it's called the Police Data Initiative, I think it's called. But yeah, I think, I don't remember, but yeah, I could never not recommend somebody be part of that. I think that's where we're headed. And so I just want to.
So Philip is next and then V.
Who?
Philip?
Yes, so I'm curious. You mentioned how police will improve with their interactions with the community and developing more trust and legitimacy. And so in your slide, you had mentioned that. And so you hadn't talked about Portland as far as, in the Northwest. I'm here every day and I see problems. I see police on motorcycles or the people mover. I don't know what you call these things. This side segways. Thank you. Yes. So I see police on those, and I see on the RAVs. I see on the RVs, and on horse. And is that really necessary? I guess I'm wondering. They're on horseback. The excrement that's created there in the street from the police, I ask them to clean it up, and they'll say no, they won't clean that up. And if I was to bring my dog out into the street and do the same thing, I'd get cited. But the police have, they're allowed to do that. So I'm just curious how a horse or a Segway or on an RV, those cost money, and that if there's a need to improve interactions with the community, I'm just curious what your opinion on that might be.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on one second. I think Vince wants to add a correction here.
Yes, we don't have policemen on Segways. There may be other enforcement teams that are in the city that may use Segways.
I've seen it. I see them every day. They're not Portland police officers.
No.
Okay.
Private security.
Private security, okay. Okay,
So
that was
just
clarifying. Now you're responding.
Just real quickly, horses are, to me, a public relations image thing, and I think they're very popular. They may not be here, but I think that's the community to decide, and and I think that input on these things is perfectly relevant to this kind of dialogue. If
Okay, V?
So this might be kind of long-winded.
go ahead.
So, but It's your fault because you've been doing this work for 40 years. So one of the things that occurred to me while you were talking, Dennis, is the cycle of prison overpopulation, since Roosevelt, but I'm not going to go that far. I'll just go back to, say, 1977. So I think it was the Coalition for Community Corrections came out with a pretty remarkable report that said, help, we need help. We need to build more prisons. You're familiar with that? So you probably know where I'm going here, right? With an effect. Essentially, they wanted to impact legislation at the federal level, and they did because despite the fact that I think the survey that I read, only 2% of the population that was polled believed that drugs were a problem at the time. I think it was 1982. So then, of course, Reagan came into office in 1982, and we saw an 11 times was spent, 11 times more. I'm trying to communicate that, but I'm tired, so forgive me. And that was in 1982. And then in 1986, then we started seeing all the ads about, remember the egg? The egg?
This is your brain on drugs.
That's that, right?
Yes.
I didn't really know drugs existed before those commercials.
Yeah.
But once they did, I was like, wow, okay. But then in 1986, the spending increased from 11 times to 33 times. And then in 1993, we had the Clinton administration with the 3 strikes and you're out policy, which of course here in Oregon, basically, short story, the federal government said to specific states that we'll give you more money if you pass these more stringent three strikes and you're out. And so Oregon came out in, I think, 93 or 94 with Measure 9, which was that? Measure 11, thank you. 9 was, okay.
Yeah, that's the other one.
Sorry, I'm a little tired. Where it delineated over, I'm not going to go into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the striking thing for me as a community member here in Portland was that the whole population seemed to just disappear overnight. And I'm wondering if and how the studies that you've done, if you've taken that sort of the political contextual environment.
Yeah, I can send an article or post it. I wrote something in the early 90s based on a national study I did in 10 cities about community and police anti-drug initiatives. And the police and the community were together actually on drug enforcement back in the 80s and 90s. And so they're both kind of complicit in this. But the point being, after Reagan, pushed the drug enforcement stuff, is that we did have a rapid growth in what we call disproportionate minority confinement at that point. Now it's called, mass incarceration, whatever. Let's be honest, we've relied too much on arrest to solve our problems, and we incarcerate per capita more people in this country than any other country in the world. And that's one problem. And the other is it disproportionately affected African Americans and now Latinos. And so we have to me, with law enforcement, it's the enforcement of minor drugs that's the problem. I mean, so that whole thing, we have to decriminalize that and stop doing that, and because that leads to all these other problems. So I should go.
I'd like to give Abel a chance to speak, and then we're going to close the meeting.
Thank you. I would just like to take this opportunity to remember, shifting our discussion, to remember a great man who passed away recently in our community, and that's Dr. Gary Pearlstein. Dr. Pearlstein left us, I believe it was March 1st. Some of you remember him and know of his work as professor in the Administration of Justice program at department. He worked very hard to create a department together with Dr. Lee Brown.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Pearlstein was one of my mentors. Everything that I learned foundationally about the administration of justice came through his mentoring and Dr. Brown's mentoring. He was a good man. He became an expert on international terrorism. Some of you remember hearing his voice whenever something horrible happened elsewhere in the world. Dr. Pearlstein was our go-to person. Many of our current corrections folks, police personnel, people working in the courts went through the Administration of Justice program department at Portland State University and had their lives influenced, touched, enriched by Dr. Pearlstein, Gary Pearlstein.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abel. We are now at 8:40. And so I would entertain a motion for adjournment. Those who want to stay and talk are free to do so. May I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
We got two so moved, so one of you will be first, one of you will second. All in favor of adjournment, raise your hands.
That was great.
All opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you for being here tonight, everyone.